welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller, and we are here after the long July 4th break/weekend. And of course, I'm joined by Toni Tresca. Hey, Toni.
Hey, Alex. It's good to be with you. How were your holidays?
They were pretty good, or holiday, or I guess, it was a long weekend for a lot of people. For freelancers like us, it's not like we got like a special day off or anything, but,
True.
Yeah, but it was still nice. Did a few things. But I'm looking at you. You were in a bare apartment in your old home, and you were making a big move to Cap Hill today, right?
That is correct, Alex. Yeah, if my podcast audio sounds a little echoey today, it's because I am in a basically empty room. All of the items except for this podcast microphone, this desk, and my laptop have been moved to my new place in Cap Hill. And yeah, after we get done recording, I'm boogieing on down there to set everything up.
That's great. I mean, you're going to be so much closer. So you've been in Louisville, and you're going to be much closer to the theater scene. You'll even be able to walk to some theaters, right?
That's accurate. Tonight I'm going to see Some Like It Hot at the Denver Center, and I am walking. No more parking garage for me.
How long a walk is it to the Denver Center now?
It's just a little bit over a mile for me. I could take the bus and be there in minutes, or I can walk and be there in like a leisurely 20-25.
That is a game changer. Well, congratulations on your big move. So, all right. Well, we've been in a little bit of a summer dip theater-wise, a little bit of a lull, I think, before things will pick up again in August, or I guess later in July too. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about what's on the big screen.
Or depending on the size of your home, a very large little screen, given that many people these days are opting to watch films at home rather than go out to the theaters.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll also touch on some news, get to our top 10 Colorado headliners, and also hear my conversation with Bryce the Zombie Guy, as I'm calling him.
Yeah, what is that all about? Bryce the Zombie Guy. It sounds like an interesting character.
Yeah, so friend of the pod and stage manager extraordinaire, Laura Mares, reached out to tell me about a show she's working on, a world premiere called Join or Die. It's going to be at the Dairy this next month. It's written, directed, and produced by Bryce Edmonds. He used to live in Boulder and now lives in Boise, Idaho. So his show is a political statement combined with a zombie apocalypse. So there you have it. That's all I know.
I feel like most zombie texts are often political statements with zombies being used to stand in for things, like going back to like George Romero's films, and you see them being stand-ins for kind of the communist mind plot that was supposedly going to overtake us all. And I personally, I can never get enough of zombies. I love them. And I know even though you're not a horror guy, you told me recently you are Team Zombie. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I saw the original Night of the Living Dead when I was a kid, the black and white one, and it scared the shit out of me. But zombies are just fascinating. A lot like monsters, they're really a mirror held up to the characters confronting them. And people are heroes or cowards, and salvation can come from unexpected places. So I think zombie, I don't know, there's something about them that, they bring out the best and the worst in people, and they're a great mirror, like I said, like a dramatic device.
And I think oftentimes, particularly with modern zombie tales, I'm looking at you, The Last of Us. You see that it's oftentimes revealed that humans are more dangerous than these zombies, that's in the background, and human politics and like interactions kind of become the real villain and like things that cause problems in the world.
Yeah. I think I saw a reviewer once. I can't remember which film they were talking about. They referred to the zombies as comic relief a lot of times. Usually by the time they get used to killing them, they're not as scary. They're pretty easily to whack. And it's some people you have to worry about, of course.
Definitely, yeah. So let's turn now back to the theater and live performing space for a second and talk about everything that we've seen since we last potted on June 24th. So what'd you get up to, Alex?
Yeah, it seems like an eternity ago, but I didn't get out to a lot that because of all other stuff going on, but I did get out to Phenomenomally, which we talked about a fair amount on the pod, so I won't get too deep into that. But I did want to go to it at Meow Wolf and see what it was really like, because it was one of those things. Even though we had one of the creators or the GM at Meow Wolf on the the site to talk about it, you really got to see it. And you've been there. You saw a rehearsal, right? And I saw kind of like the more of the finished product, and went there with my granddaughters and my wife and son, and we all had a great time. So like all generations seem to enjoy it. There's definitely good family fun.
I feel like it really walks that line with immersive, where it's you don't have to interact at all if you don't want to, and you can just watch it more like a traditional piece, which I know probably appeals more to someone like your wife, Jen,
Right.
who
Yeah.
doesn't like that element of it. But also, if you do want to interact with like the misfits and whatnot, you can go up and have that conversation. So I feel like it kind of is the best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly. And then also saw Rock of Ages at the Pace Center, which was a really great production of kind of a stalwart, I guess, musical in some ways for the 80s, people that like the 80s stuff. And the other thing I was going to mention, I don't know, maybe this kind of segues into our talk about the big screen, but I've been watching The Eternaut on Netflix. Have you seen this?
I've never even heard of this. What is this?
It's an Argentine series about, it's an apocalyptic story where everything gets freezing cold and these giant bugs appear from space. So it sounds like a comic book, but it's really well done. And I really enjoyed it, it's these bugs you could also kind of say they're sort of like the zombies. They're these things that are fairly easy to kill, but there's a lot of them. And there's all this drama between the characters. And I just, at the end, they said it's coming back for a second season. So I'd recommend this one if you like that genre. It doesn't sound, it's not quite as ridiculous as it sounds once you're watching it, because it's kind of a slow burn before they get to some of the heavier action as the people are trying to figure out what the hell's going on. So I enjoy The Eternaut on just one of those Netflix shows that pops up from another country, which you never know. Sometimes they're great.
Yeah, I was like, Netflix has really been investing in programming from other countries. It's how they got one of their biggest hits, Squid Game. So I can see they're like, okay, this can return big. And
Yeah.
sounds like the Eternaut is another intriguing show for them. At least it's
Yeah.
going to
I
get
don't
another
know.
season two.
Yeah, I don't know what it stands for, but yeah, speaking of Squid Game, Andy and I just started watching that. We just watched the first episode of the new season, so getting into that.
Nice.
But you saw more stuff.
I did, and I'll add one more to your list that you saw. You and I made the drive to Silverthorne together to check out Theater Silco's production of Spiel Magnolias.
Oh my gosh, how did I forget that? Yeah, so we wanted to make this trip because, hey, it's not that hard to get up to Silverthorne as long as you don't get into any I-70 shenanigans, which actually, if we had gone the next day, we would have been hosed because there was this terrible accident by the tunnel fire, and somebody was killed.
We went on a Wednesday night, and it was no traffic, just a smooth ride up I-70.
Yeah, so this is just an amazing show. Toni's review is on the site now, and he really gets into the detail about what made it great, starting with director Missy Moore and a fantastic cast with a lot of well-known names like Emma Messenger, Maggie Tisdale, and Teresa Schwartz, Leslie O'Carroll, I'm sorry, and really great show.
Yeah, this was my first time checking out this play. I had never even read it, or I missed the film too.
Yeah.
And it really affected me. It's a very gripping story about a Southern community who comes together to support this young woman who has diabetes but is still trying to get pregnant and has a complicated pregnancy. And yeah, there are some really blistering performances. I really enjoyed Maggie Tisdale's work in this show. Her character goes on a really massive arc, and she starts getting to play these really comic elements in the beginning, but then by the end of the show, she just leaves you in tears. Me, you, everybody else in the audience who we heard sniffling and could see because it's in a thrust stage configuration.
And watching Emma and Leslie on stage together, so and I guess they're friends in real life, and just great dynamic between them, sort of, because these women, a lot of them, they sort of spar with each other, especially the older ones, and it's a lot of fun. It's just a great play and just a really, really well done version of. I think it's got another week or so up there.
That's
so
right.
Chance.
And
what else?
we saw. Oh,
okay.
We actually saw Missy Moore at the show. She was there rehearsing
Yeah.
in the back room of Theater Silco for their next production, which she is starring in, What the Constitution Means to Me. And you actually told me that there is a family connection to this show. Missy is directing it, and her mom, Wendy Moore, also directed this show.
Yeah, at the Backstage Theater. Wow, a long time ago, probably in the, I don't know, 80s or early 90s or something like that. But honestly, if you're a theater director, at some point you're probably going to direct Steel Magnolias or something similar. So, but yeah, it was cool to, having seen Wendy do it many years ago, and then seeing her daughter come along into it. It's always really cool to see that I don't know, continuity across the ages or whatever you want to call it. So, but Missy has certainly just bloomed into a really fantastic director, and so capable of doing all those director things on stage and bringing out great performances, and making. And as you pointed out in the review, the action in this play was really great because it all takes place in the same space, but it never stops moving.
Yeah, it's this play I feel is deceptively challenging because I easily see how this could become really dull since it's all in the same location in a hair salon and it's all essentially the same action in theory, just like getting hair done. So how do you make that interesting as it takes place across 3 years? And Missy does that by constantly making sure that there's always interesting stage business for all of her actresses to be doing and making and really allowing you to have a view of people reacting to the scene at all times. So you have this main scene that's going on, as well as all of these other reactions and little bits of stage business that are going on that just make it feel lived in a way that sometimes in these kind of smaller plays that are in one setting, it just feels like people sitting in a room kind of
Yep.
reciting dialogue. That is not the case in this production.
Yep. Yeah, and I do remember Wendy Moore when I used to, do some shows back in the day, that she always talked about positive wallpaper. If you're not actively involved in the scene, don't just stand there. I mean, you do something interesting but not distracting, and that kind of a thing. And it's certainly Missy seems to have taken that to heart, and does it very well. So great show up there. Great to see Chris Alleman, the artistic director, up there, who's been at it for many years there. So, all right. Well, moving on. What else did you get out to on stage?
I've seen a lot actually. It was
Yeah, you have.
pretty busy for me. I also made the drive up north to Johnstown to check out their production of Anastasia. This is the adaptation of what was originally a Fox, like a 20th Century Fox film, but since that's been bought by Disney, I guess it's technically now a Disney Princess film. Um, but it's been adapted for the stage, and Candlelight does a really splendid job. It's set during the Russian Revolution, and it's following this lost child of the former leaders she's got amnesia, and she gets involved in this con in order that these two schemesters are doing in order to kind of extort money from this family, and so they kind of train her to be this princess, but then along the way, oh no, they realize she is the princess. It was in her the whole time. And that plot, I just made it sound really trite and silly, and it kind of is. But the music is really lush. They've got a really exceptional orchestra playing live things there. The dancing is just exceptional. They've got everything from swing dancing to tap to kind of Russian folk style dancing. It's just really exceptional work, and the acting is really sharp across the board. My only note from attending the production was there was a couple of microphone issues, particularly early on with the lead actress's main solo. It was really inaudible due to the microphone cutting out. Luckily, however, the team was able to swap out that mic pack and get the show rolling smoothly. But other than that, it was a really slickly produced production from Candlelight, which is not a surprise. This is kind of their bread and butter.
Yep. That's a pretty smooth, well-oiled machine, as you might say. So, to switch the mic pack, did a stagehand actually come on and switch it while she was mid song, or how did they do that?
No, no. She just kind of forced through the number and the remaining dialogue that she had on stage. When she made an exit,
Oh,
they
okay.
swapped out the mic pack off stage, and so then when she came back on for the next scene, the microphone was working.
Okay. All right. What else?
I also saw The Book Handlers, which we've talked about on the podcast before, so I won't spend a ton of time on. This is a remount of Buntport's 2018 satire about a bunch of workers who are paid to read books for wealthy people so that they can look smart without actually having to do any work. And I found it to just be really exceptional work. It's really funny. It's built on this larger than life set that goes all the way up to the top of Buntport's massive warehouse. It's got all these kind of Rube Goldberg contraptions that they use to swing books across to each other. And I think it's just a really blistering satire of people who would prefer to stick their head in the sand rather than engage with the issues that are going on in the world around them.
Wow.
And yeah, it's not, I think it's closed at this point or closing very, very soon. But if they ever do remount it, I guess for the third time, I hope that they don't have a reason to do it for a third time.
Yeah.
But if they do, I would definitely say it's worth the time.
Yep. And you'll definitely get a primer on the finer points of marginalia, which is not something you often see.
That is accurate. I also checked out the fifth annual Boulder Comedy Festival. One of its shows. It was actually the brunch performance that they did inside the Louisville Underground, which is it's a weird little venue in the back of a pinball arcade in Louisville. But the show was exceptional. Boulder Comedy Festival is it's a show that's built around kind of bringing more diversity into the community, and that is exactly what was featured on the lineup. It was about I think it was about 10 or 11 comics on the set, and they were just you never knew what kind of joke style you were going to get. You were getting everything from jokes about the queer community to like people talking about their divorces to people doing more traditional stand-up stuff, and it was just a really fun time. It was completely sold out. And the crowd seemed really into it. So, which it's always impressive to me when you can get people out by 2 p.m. on a Sunday for a comedy show and it
Yeah,
works because comedy is kind of more of a late night activity. And so if your jokes work during the daytime, you're doing something right.
for sure. Yeah.
Um, and then I also checked in the Boulder area. I checked out the national touring production of Saw the Musical, which I found to be just torturous. It is a beat for beat kind of parody of the first film, often with just direct lines of dialogue that are not changed at all, or just like added like a really dated joke, like they were making jokes about Cinnabon or streaming services, which feel
Oh, wow.
straight from like the 2019, and you're like, I
So
just don't
old.
I just don't understand how this got staged originally, or why any producer would want to then tour this piece of crap around the country. I just found it to be a parody without a point,
Yeah.
and yeah, if you want to hear more about my thoughts of Saw, I've got a review coming out in Boulder Weekly this upcoming week, in which I really just kind of I dig into it because this was one of the more frustrating things I've ever seen.
Yeah. It sucks. Read all about it. There is a sort of weird, I don't know, enjoyment of reading a bad review. Sometimes they can be very funny, right?
I tried to make it funny. I think it's funnier than the show I've watched.
Yeah. And I saw you had fish on your list. I didn't know you're a fish head of any kind, or are you?
I have never been to a fish show before. I am not exactly what I would call a fish head going into it, but my girlfriend is very into fish, and she was like, we should go to the 4th of July show to see Fish this year. It's at
Uh-huh.
Folsom. She lives in Boulder. We got tickets for cheap. And so that is how I ended up going to Fish. And I had a blast. I had no idea what to expect really. I hadn't listened to any of their music, so I wasn't going in with any preconceived notions at all. And they do a really impressive thing. They do a really impressive show. It's massive lighting rigs that are doing these really extravagant designs behind the band the entire time. They play for basically 3.5 hours straight, basically never stopping. And the vibes are just so kind. which is not
Uh-huh.
something I usually say about a concert. Oftentimes people are really belligerent and drunk and it can get kind of nasty,
Uh-huh.
particularly depending on what show you're at. I won't name any names, but I have been to a few kind of seedier shows like that. And everybody at Fish was super nice. You feel like you could like leave your stuff out, and go to the bathroom, and nobody would touch it. That's kind of the vibe of the whole event. And so
That's great.
I would definitely go back again. I think I see the appeal. I see why people travel the country to watch these people, and why I was talking to people. It was weird. I go and see a lot of live performances, but I felt like such a baby in this space because I was talking to people who had seen Fish like
Oh yeah.
150 times
Yeah.
or 200 times, and they were like, "Whoa, your first time? You're such a virgin. You're so new to this." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I guess I am. I know
You got to
nothing
start
about this world."
somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly. But they were all
Yeah.
really excited. It wasn't very gatekeepy in that like they were like, "Oh, you're new? That's awesome. We can't wait for you to experience the show." Or like, "What'd you think? What was it like for your first time?" Which so it was fun.
That's great. It's funny, people always talk about them as kind of the successor to the Grateful Dead scene, which, I was into when I was younger. I saw, 30 something shows, which even, was not even that much for the Dead back then. But, after Jerry died, I never really got back into that whole scene. But I would definitely check out Fish if it was happening and I was nearby or something like that. You also had on the list here Acro Cats. Is that something separate, or did they warm up for Fish?
Oh no, this is something separate, Alex. This is a show
Acro
that takes
Cats.
place over at the Bug Theater. The full title of the show is The Amazing Acrocats, featuring Tuna and the Rock Cats. And it is a 90-minute show that features rescue cats performing tricks on stage with the help of three human trainers. This show has been touring the country since 2010. It actually debuted its first like touring show at the Bug Theater in 2010, and they've been coming here every other year since. And after seeing the show, I can really see why. It was entirely sold out, which I was like literally every seat in the Bug was taken. It's not a massive theater, but
Yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to see it completely filled. And these cats are just so silly. Unlike dogs who kind of you can really train them well and they'll do the trick on command because they love you and need your love. And cats are way more fickle. And so oftentimes they would be like, do this trick. And the cats would look at them and then like run off the stage, much to the chagrin of the trainers and the amusement of the entire audience. Because cats, they just have so much personality. And this show really allows their personalities to come through.
Wow. Was our friend John Moore, major cat fan, in the front row with
I didn't see him
bells
in
on?
the crowd
Okay.
when I went, but I saw that John wrote a piece about the Acrocats for the Denver Gazette, so I would not be shocked if he did attend. And if folks
Okay.
want to learn more about the history of the Acrocats, I would definitely recommend heading over to the Gazette because John does a really good rundown of everything, including their 45-foot cat touring bus that goes across the country and what goes into that.
That's great. Love it. All right. Well, switching to the news, I think we have a number of things to touch on. So you had something on the statewide level. What's this first item
Yeah.
here?
So on June 26th, Governor Polis and our friends over at the Colorado Creative Industries announced 10 recipients of the Community Revitalization Tax Credit. And this is a program that supports the creative sector's capital projects. So this includes building studio spaces, performance spaces, or art education buildings that incorporate features like affordable housing, childcare, retail, or other community spaces. And through the Community Revitalization Program, these eligible applicants can receive tax credits of up to $3 million to cover 25% of their eligible expenses. And so all of the recipients were announced today, and they include the Aspen Music Festival and School, Boulder Community Broadcast Association, aka KGNU. That's going into their building that they're remodeling, that they're doing in Boulder, the World Wonder View Tower project over in the Eastern Plains, the Cleo Parker Robinson Dance renovations that are going on in Denver, the Foothill Arts Center project that's happening in Golden, the Headwater Housing Partners in Grand Junction, the Powerhouse in Durango, Spanish Peaks Community Foundation in Walsenburg, and the Adamberger development in Inglewood. And this work will support the development of 185 affordable housing units, community gathering spaces, and other services for the communities.
Wow. Okay. Well, as we always like to say, when we hear good news about this kind of thing, we definitely want to celebrate it, since there's plenty of, oh my gosh, we're broke, we're going out of business kind of news in these regions as well. So that's great to hear, and that it's going to be a really tight time in coming years. Between Colorado's budget is really screwed up, and the federal government, of course, is run by acrocats on speed or something. Or LSD, I don't know. So anyway, okay, cool. Well, that's great news. And then another cool news comes from the Arvada Center. This is really neat. This is somebody really active person in Colorado theater. So what's this one?
As of July, Kenny Moten is going to be joining the company's team as the Associate Artistic Director. Kenny is going to be helping current Artistic Director Len Collins with casting, producing, and planning for its 2026-2027 theater season, as well as the future of the theater program. And of course, this comes after the Arvada Center had already announced that Kenny was going to be directing this season's productions of Frozen, as well as Come From Away. And Kenny is definitely a man about town. He has been directing shows not only all across all of Colorado, but across the entire country. And he does really exceptional work. I think one of my favorites of his recently was his rendition of Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella back in 2023 over at the Arvada Center. That was a really inventive reimagining of what it can be, a kind of old-fashioned fairy tale. It just felt very contemporary and exciting and alive with dynamic choreography and a really specific vision. So if that is what Kenny is going to be, the type of productions and imagination that he's going to be bringing to the Arvada Center, I'd say that this is a really fantastic pick, and also just makes sense. He's been directing so much for them over the past couple of years. You might as well bring him on staff.
Right. Is this a new position, Associate Art AD?
Okay. I believe this is a new position. There was nobody in the position before Kenny. The Arvada Center may have had this in past times before I was covering theater, but it's not been a recent position.
All right. And then news from Longmont. What's this all about?
Yeah, so Longmont Theatre Company announced a new board, and I'm reading from its press release that they shared on July 1st. Quote, in collaboration with the outgoing board of directors, a new grassroots initiative is bringing fresh leadership and energy to the Longmont Theatre Company, aimed at securing a vibrant, community-engaged future for the Longmont Theatre Company and the Longmont Performing Arts Center. Effective July 1st, Charlie Wright has accepted the role of board chair, leading a newly appointed board of directors committed to community engagement, artistic excellence, and sustainable growth. The previous board members have graciously stepped aside to allow for this transition, and the organization thanks them for their years of service and dedication.
Wow, there's definitely probably a lot behind that story, it sounds like. But yeah, they've been in a little bit of disarray, so very interesting and exciting. Hopefully this is a positive turn for them. And I recall that they were involved in some legal trouble too, so is this related to that?
Yeah, this situation is definitely a little bit more nuanced and complicated than that press release makes it sound. As people might recall who have been listening to the podcast for a while, or anybody who's been following this, a public power struggle broke out between the board and its longtime president, Faye Lamb, because last June, former board members Peg Belen and Charlie Wright, who is now taking over as board president, filed a complaint in the Boulder County District Court that alleged that Lamb had actively conspired to bypass the required participation of company volunteers in major company decisions, including the selection of new board members. That case was set for trial, but on last Wednesday, a resolution was announced that includes a reshuffled leadership. Lamb, the face of the company since becoming the board president in 2016, is now out, along with the rest of the existing board, and an entirely new board of directors, including Wright, Belen, Jay Jaginski, Robert Mass, and Scott Dunn is taking over.
Wow.
Yeah.
Having natives from Longmont. Wow. That's, well, good. Best of luck to them. Hopefully this is a start of a great new chapter. So
I hope so. Longmont Theatre Company has been in kind of a little bit of a dark place for a little while, and so I'm hoping that the new leadership really takes some time, listens to the community and what they're looking for and how they'd like to see that space actualized, and then move forward from there. Because it's a real shame to like see that space be basically dormant for so much of the year. The Longmont Performing Arts Center is a really gorgeous venue, and Longmont deserves a really active theater scene because pretty much it's only been their museum that's been picking up the slack with its theater that they built in. That's yeah. So
yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
All right. Cool. Also in that area, Boulder's local theater company announced its 15th season. They sent me the press release. I'd already seen it and posted it. Like, I don't know. So I guess, I don't know if there were multiple announcements or whatever, but what have they got coming up in their next season?
So they are doing Local Listens, Queer Lineage, which is similar to what they did last season with the Democracy Cycle, in that they're going to be bringing together community members from around the state for story circles that are going to inspire new plays written by two commissioned playwrights. I can confirm that one of those playwrights will be Stephen Burge, who participated in their local lab last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the name of the other author yet, but as soon as I have that information, I will share it. And so they're going to be doing these story circles over the course of summer 2025. They'll then show a kind of a workshop of what has been going on from this about halfway through the process before these 45-minute plays will be presented in April of 2026.
Wow. Okay, cool. What else have they got coming up?
So they've also got in October 2025 at the Dairy Arts Center, they're doing the world premiere of Corey Alston's A Case for Black Girls, setting Central Park on fire. And this is going to be directed by Betty Hart. And this comes after it was supported in a developmental workshop back in 2020. This was from this year's Local Lab 14.
Okay.
I remember being a little bit mixed on that reading. It was a lot of kind of esoteric poetry and an interesting mix of gospel music as well as kind of prose about this, to tell this kind of cerebral story about a 12-year-old Black girl and her life from Brooklyn to Harlem. I think it has potential. I'm curious to see what revisions are made to the piece from Local Lab. But yeah, that'll be up in October.
Okay, cool. Well, in capable hands there with Betty Hart for sure.
Absolutely. And then in January and February of 2026, Local is joining forces with Curious Theater Company for a National New Play Network rolling world premiere of Bad Books. This is a two-hander about a librarian who clashes with a concerned parent over a controversial book title, Boob Juice, that was recently added to the small town's public library shelf. So that production is going to kick off at Curious Theater in Denver in January, and then it's going to move to the Dairy Arts Center in February for Local's run of it.
Okay, well, that sounds like an appropriate pairing. Local and Curious definitely have some of the same DNA as kind of shows that they like to do, so that should be interesting.
I also thought so. I was like, when I read that those two organizations were partnering, I was like, that makes so much sense. It's kind of shocking that it hasn't happened more often, just given that they're both so committed to new plays. And I would imagine there's probably not a ton of competition for audiences, given that one's in Denver and one's in Boulder. So This collaboration seems like a really interesting chance to bridge those audiences potentially.
Yeah. Yep. And then, of course, they'll be back in April with their annual Local Lab New Play Festival. Any more news on that? It'll be at the Nomad again.
Nope, I don't have any updates other than it's for the second year in a row over at the Nomad, and it'll be 3 plays like usual.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know if this is news, but I wanted to mention this one. It's a topic we've touched on before, but it popped up again, and I still find this fascinating. And we're talking about bathroom signage and such. So Julia Tubby, friend of the pod, whom we spoke about in the last podcast, and how she's opening the Ballyhoo event space in Denver, posted on Facebook asking people what they thought about bathroom signage and configuration. So this has been a hot topic with some theaters, notably like Miners Alley and Wonderbound, and to a lesser extent Vintage, which did kind of a weird take on the all gender bathroom.
Yeah, it's been I know that one's got a little bit of a mixed reaction from community members. A lot of people are even taking to going on like Google and leaving negative reviews on there that mention that, which is, that is information.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's definitely a bit of a trend of creating these all gender bathrooms. Like it's like it is at Miners Alley and Wonderbound. Is one space with floor to ceiling stalls and a common sink area. And so Julie posted to ask what people thought about what they're looking at there in Ballyhoo. So she had one sign that said women/all gender/stalls only, and another was men/all gender urinals and stall. And I was like, I don't know if that seems a little confusing.
Yeah, it was definitely a bit of a confusing kind of word salad there. I was like I'm very sympathetic to this and I want to be as inclusive as possible, but I was kind of like, after reading that, I'm not really sure where people are supposed to go. And I was not the only person who was confused. I saw that post that she made about it had like 75 comments on it.
Yeah, yeah, and they were all over the map. And the one that stuck out to me was from Jason Rex, who posted, "As a cis man, I want to go wherever my presence won't make someone else uncomfortable." And I have to say that when I'm at, say, Miners Alley washing my hands next to a woman, I get the impression that they'd prefer I be elsewhere. And I just don't think that that everybody's as comfortable as some of these theaters think about sharing these facilities, just because it's such a huge break with tradition. And as I've noted before, my wife is kind of a hard no on these setups, and she'll even think twice about going to a theater that has that. So it's just a guess, but I'm also pretty sure that women would prefer not to be within 20 feet of a urinal. And that's all just on the cisgender side. It's another thing altogether when you start mixing in more gender fluid or trans folks. It's just such a complicated topic.
It really is complicated. And that what you were mentioning was kind of what about women being uncomfortable with men being in their spaces, like a cis men. That was what was being commented on the Google reviews on Vintage's page, with people saying that they were very dismayed to find a man in what had been the ladies' bathroom. And this reviewer went on to say that they would never go back there again because of that. And so it's a legitimate concern for people, but you also don't want to alienate people who are trans or non-binary.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
you actually have it's a much more complicated issue than I think just like change the language on the front of on the bathroom sign, as Julie Toby's post ultimately kind of revealed. It's a really complicated issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you have all kinds of space and money, you could address it more easily. You could just have an all gender bathroom and then traditional men's and women's rooms or whatever. But not all theaters have that, so it makes it
Exactly.
tricky.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, you had a kind of an in memoriam section here. What's this one all about?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a quick RIP to the Underground Music Showcase. After 25 years of showcasing indie talent, UMS is going to be shutting down following this summer's festival. The organizers cite rising costs and shifting industry norms, but they say they're going to be giving the festival a proper send-off this year, July 25th through 27th. So they've got legacy acts like Devachka and the Flowbots who are going to be headlining that weekend. But it's definitely going to be a bittersweet kind of vibe, I imagine, there on South Broadway during UMS this year, since everybody knows it's the last hurrah.
Yeah, yeah, and I know our friend of the pod, John Moore, was one of the co-founders of this, and I think he's written about it in the Denver Gazette if you want to get some perspective on that. I never went, so I don't know. I've never experienced it, so sorry to say, but I will try and get to some of it this year.
Yeah, it's a really exciting collection of largely local acts with a few more national headliners who come in, and it's just spread out in all these really quirky venues across South Broadway Strip. Everybody's walking around. There's music flowing out through the doors. It's like I've been a couple times, and it's definitely a shame
Yeah,
to see it go.
yeah. They're hard to do. They really are, those kinds of things. As we saw with
100%.
especially like something that requires just all these pieces, parts like Denver Fringe. They're hard to do. You've got to have real dedication and probably be able to absorb some of the costs, because it's probably not going to be a moneymaker. Supporting OnStage Colorado is Rocky Mountain Repertory Theatre in Grand Lake. Their 2025 summer season runs from June 6th through September 5th and includes Disney's Frozen, Guys and Dolls, Footloose, and Nonsense. Find tickets at RockyMountainRep.com. OnStage Colorado is brought to you by Colorado Candlelight, featuring Anastasia through August 31st. This dazzling show transports its audience from the twilight of the Russian Empire to the euphoria of Paris in the 1920s as a brave young woman sets out to discover the mystery of her past. Tickets at coloradocandlelight.com. And we're supported by Theater Silco in Silverthorne, featuring Steel Magnolias June 20th through July 13th. It's a classic, heartwarming drama that's also got a lot of laughs as a hodgepodge of women form friendships as strong as steel, which they are forced to lean on when tragedy strikes. Tickets at thesilco.org. So, anyway, well, let's turn to our main topic. What are we talking about again?
We are talking about the flickering screen and what's up with the summer blockbusters this year.
Blockbusters. I don't know. So, yeah, I think the only one I've seen was Mission Impossible, which was pretty good. It was definitely a blockbuster. I don't have any plans to see some of these others, although I'm usually inexplicably drawn to Jurassic Park movies. But you saw Jurassic World Rebirth, right? And you said it was pretty schlocky but fun or something like that.
That's exactly right. I got myself popcorn. I was wearing the souvenir Jurassic World Rebirth lanyard that they were giving out on the first weekend, and
Wow.
I was there to watch some big dumb dinosaurs. I do feel as though I may have actively gotten stupider from watching it because the writing and the plotting were so contrived and asinine. But I had a good time. The dinos looked cool. It was all shot on film, so it at least looks good.
Uh-huh. It reminds me a little bit of the newest Rick and Morty episode. Features they dive into the world of the mega action thing, and they actually have Zack Snyder and Robert Gunn. James Gunn voice themselves in the show, and they have this movie machine that tries to create the perfect like sort of Marvel type movie, and it's pretty damn funny. But anyway, so other big ones this summer: F1 the movie. This is a Brad Pitt thing, a Brad Pitt vehicle, no pun, but I have to say I heard
That
it
was
was
good.
pretty
That's
good.
good, Alex.
I heard it was pretty good, but I tell you what, I hate race car driving. I think it's such a stupid waste of gas, and I don't know. I just think unless they're using electric cars, but they don't make cool sounds, and I don't think anybody wants
They
to
are
race
not, they're
electric cars.
definitely not using electric cars. These are gas guzzling
Yeah.
road machines that they're using. I saw this one in IMAX. It is really well shot. I also don't really care about racing, and I can't say I'm going to watch any racing after seeing the film,
Mm-hmm.
but it made me I was kind of surprised. It eventually made me interested in I was like, oh, what kind of tires are they going to have to use? Oh, and I was like, and you're like, I guess that's the main conflict of the movie, which pressure of tire to use. And then they all have consequences, which I guess that's
Yeah.
probably not doing a great job of selling the movie to
Yeah.
folks, but
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up. My dad was a race fan, and I was going to midget races and stuff, stock cars on Long Island when I was growing up out there in Islip. Used to drag me to IndyCar races down in Phoenix, and after a couple of laps, I lost track of who was where, and I was like, oh God. But to each his own, I guess. So, also, How to Train Your Dragon has come back in a live version, as did Lilo and Stitch, both kind of great animated kids movies from, I guess, the 90s or early 20, maybe 2010s was How to Train Your Dragon. Yeah, Lilo and Stitch was, I have a couple of generations of sons, and I remember Max was super into Lilo and Stitch, and then Andy was super into How to Train Your Dragon, which was a great movie series. But anyway, so those are out and apparently doing pretty well, but I don't know if they're any good or not.
They're certainly making a lot of money, and I've only seen Lilo and Stitch, but I thought that was really bad. It's a soulless adaptation of the animated film that somehow misses the point.
Uh-huh.
of it, in kind of trying to update it for a new generation. I found it very frustrating. And then after seeing that, I was like, you know what? I don't know why I keep doing this. I don't know why I keep going to any of these live action remakes of these things. I
Yeah.
know I'm going to hate them. I know they're going to be bad, and so I was like, I'm not seeing this How to Train Your Dragon movie. I think it's just
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
Lilo and Stitch was my breaking point. I'm
Yeah.
officially broken, Alex.
I think soulless adaptation would be a great name for a spoof movie about a live
Oh,
action remake of a anyway, Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning that kind of opened the summer season. That was a good one. I mean, I know you
yeah.
saw it. We also were watching the earlier ones, and it's interesting to watch them from the first one or two, which were kind of cheesy. Second one especially, and they kind of got more and more polished until they really kind of really dialed it into this. It's a formula, but it's a damn good formula. And who knows how much longer Tom Cruise, who's my age, can be hanging off of airplanes and stuff. I think my hanging off of airplanes years past a long time ago. So more power to him. But that one's still out there. Definitely a good one to see in the big on the big screen with the big chair. Final Destination. This is an ongoing. How many Bloodlines is the name of the newest one? How many of these films have they made?
This is Final Destination 6.
Uh-huh. Wow. And is this a series that you've paid any attention to? I haven't.
This is a series I've paid attention to. This new one is a lot of fun. It's arguably got the most plot of any of these movies, but I say arguably because it's still basically no plot. It's mostly you are just going to watch hot people get Rue Goldberg to death. And this one delivers in epic fashions. I think my favorite kill was this one in which a guy gets sucked dick first into an MRI machine.
Oh
Um,
God.
it's truly one of those sequences that must be seen to be believed.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, I don't know about that one. Thunderbolts is another one on this list. I don't know anything about that. What is Thunderbolts? Do you have any idea?
Oh, it's the new Marvel. I hear the new Marvel's
Oh,
pretty good.
oh boy.
That's a reference to another movie that came out this summer, Friendship. It's not a blockbuster, but it is a
Uh-huh.
very fun comedy starring Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd.
Yeah, I'd like to see
Um,
that.
and they do a riff about how this like really average guy is super excited about the new Marvel. He hears the new Marvel is really good, and that's how I feel about this Thunderbolts movie. It's perfectly competently made, but I feel we should. It's very telling that we've gotten to a place with Marvel and the Marvel Cinematic Universe that like competent is like good,
Yeah.
is good enough. I'm like, so it's fine. It's like a very simple story about emotional trauma, which is very end these days. But yeah, it's perfectly passable.
Yeah. Okay. And we have another Superman coming up, which I'm definitely skeptical about. I don't know how you can top. Um. Oh shit! What the hell's his name? Who did the last round?
Zack Snyder.
No, I was thinking about the actor who played
Oh,
Superman.
Henry Cavill.
Of course, Henry Cavill, who's just fantastic in that role. And I don't know. I don't know anything about this one, although I saw the trailer for it and I was like, holy shit. It give me a headache just watching the trailer. There was so much shit going on with all these different. It seemed like he was fighting like 17 different enemies at the same time. I was like, wow. So I don't know. What do you think?
I'm seeing this one on Thursday when it opens. I'm gonna be there. I'm very curious about this new adaptation. I like a lot of James Gunn's past works. I'm not a big Superman fan, um, and I will be curious to see how like a hero dedicated to upholding truth, justice, and the American way plays in
Right.
2025 when
What
it
is
feels
the
like
American way?
exactly. I'm like, can we even agree on what the American way is
I
anymore? And
Yeah.
I'm already seeing Fox News cover like woke Superman
Oh boy.
movie as being that, since it's apparently James Gunn made some comment about how his Superman is an American story about an immigrant who does good, and now so I That's, I feel, is perhaps going to be the tenor of the overall discussion, but I'm trying to just tune that crap out and just go and then see what the movie is without, I'm not reading any reviews in advance. I just want to
Okay.
go in and see what it's like.
Okay. And then the last one that I was going to mention is the Fantastic Four, which was a show that I grew up at, cheesy cartoon on Saturday morning cartoons back in the day. That I'd be curious to see how that comes up. It's certainly not the first film version of the Fantastic Four, but I think this one comes with a lot of expectation.
Yeah, it's like this one's got Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby in the lead. Good supporting cast, it looks like. Um, I would say the like my biggest holdup, like the trailers look pretty interesting, the cast is strong. It's just Marvel's track record at the moment. I'm like, do they actually know how to make like a good movie, like an interesting, compelling movie anymore? I think this might be the test of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Pedro Pascal is also starting to, he's kind of, seems like he's sort of new on the scene. He's kind of blown up in the last, 10 years, maybe even less. But he's already getting a little bit old for that kind of a role, it seems like. But, he just, everybody just wants to hire him for everything. And he's a great actor.
He
So,
is. I'm personally more excited for Pedro Pascal's turn in the. It's not a blockbuster, but it's a Ari Aster's new Western film, Eddington, which is set during the COVID-19 pandemic and stars Pedro Pascal and Joaquin Phoenix as two people on opposite sides of the political spectrum going back and forth. It
oh,
seems
wow.
really moody. People are really angry about it already. So I'm curious to see what all that's about.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Eddington. All right. Well, all of this, one of the things that kicked this off was a story that I came across in Variety, and they were talking about they'd interviewed a bunch of like movie cinema executives, I guess, or exhibition executives, as they called them, in this survey, and talked about how a lot of them seem to think that the movie theater has less than 20 years remaining as a viable business model, and some of them think even less than that. And it seems, for like almost like a decade ago, we all thought like movie theaters were kind of going by the wayside. And then I don't know, I feel like they had a little bit of a resurgence after the pandemic. And, there's been some interesting things like the Movie Pass at AMC, which you have and use all the time, which is why you're always going to movies. What's your
That's
take? I
right.
mean, what do you think we'll lose if we don't have movie theaters to go to?
Well, I think it's similar to why I think the live theater is so important. It's a really critical point of connection in which people from all different backgrounds and walks of life come together and choose to sit in community for an hour and a half or more. I think that there is something really sad and kind of dystopian about this idea that all we can just get everything out of entertainment in our own isolated environments alone by ourselves, and that's like the peak of what we should look for in art and creation. And so I really personally, and why I have the AMC pass and why I go often 3 or more times a week to the theater is I love going to the theater and talking to people as they're coming out, or hearing people react in real time to the things that are going on the big screen. And I had been feeling kind of pessimistic about the movie theaters as well, but this summer has really picked up. There have been, it feels like most weekends have big event films that are getting people out to the theaters. And I think that is, if I was going to make a prediction, I'm not sure if I agree with this. Movie theaters only have 20 years left, but I do think that perhaps we only have a certain amount of time where we're going to be showing a variety of films
Yeah.
on the big screen. I think I am kind of inclined to agree with the argument that movie theaters, like what's kind of happening in the live theater space, are moving to like people will only come out to events. They're not just going to come out if it doesn't feel like they need to leave the house. And so, what does that mean? That means only the bigger budget ones or movies that make you feel like you're missing out on something are going to be the ones that hit big. And I do think there we will continue to see a winnowing of like mid to small budget films perhaps getting a theatrical release, which is disappointing, but I guess perhaps an inevitable path of an industry that's been in decline for years.
Yeah, it is interesting though. If you think about like the AMC 24 in Highlands Ranch where I live, that is enormous, 24 screens, and they often have a lot of smaller films there. They've got all the big ones, but they also carry some of those indie films, foreign films, reboots of or just re-releases of things like that. So I don't know. It's what do you do with a space like that? I mean, gosh, I would hate to see it be empty. And I really, I don't go to the cinema very often. And like you said, I'm one of those people that just goes to like the big action-y films like Dune or Mission Impossible, that kind of stuff. And it's not that I don't like the experience or I even don't think it's too expensive. I'm just, maybe I'm lazy, but I don't know. Of course, I go out to the theater all the time. I don't know. Maybe I should go to the movies more. Because I do enjoy it. And then plus they upgraded the seats so much in these theaters too.
Yeah, and maybe call me an optimist here, but I also I kind of feel that perhaps with the advantation of like AI and its acceleration and expansion, perhaps there will just continue to be there could be kind of a pushback to that and people kind of choosing to cherish like those live experiences and and people created content rather than crap on the screens or AI stuff. So I don't know. Maybe call me a hopeless optimist, but I for one, I would like to see the human race and the human spirit continue to endure and create.
Absolutely.
Well, that is it for our conversation about films. We are now going to toss it to Alex's interview with playwright Bryce Edmonds, whose zombie piece Join or Die opens in August.
All right, we are here with playwright Bryce Edmonds calling in. Are you in Boise right now?
I'm here in Boulder now.
Oh, you're in Boulder because you're originally from Boulder, right?
No, I'm originally from New Jersey, but I lived here. How is it? I was traveling once, and no matter like backpacking around the world, no matter where I went, everyone would be like, "Armpit of America, New Jersey." I'm like, how do you know that?
I grew up on Long Island, so the one exit thing is always the joke. But New Jersey has some very beautiful areas to it.
It's true. It's not the Garden State for no reason, Alex.
No, I mean a lot of people I think see the northern part when they're around New York City, and it's got all the really nasty industrial areas and stuff. But
for sure,
lots. But anyway, so we're here to talk about your play Join or Die, which is a zombie thing, which piqued my interest because I'm a zombie fan, like many of us. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about this play. So this is it's a mashup of some sort of a historical context with zombies. So can you explain a little bit about what's the story about?
For sure. So it is a zombie horror comedy. And basically the tagline is, sometime in the future, somewhere in the U.S., the former U.S., 6 people meet in secret to try to jumpstart government while zombies rage outside. So basically the milieu is sort of, it kind of blossoms as the play goes along. You're not sure where you are quite yet. Information comes to you, and meanwhile, zombies are raging and other stuff is going on. So that's the basics.
Okay. Well, what kind of zombies are these? Are they fast, slow? Are they plague zombies? Are they living dead? What's the story there?
So, Alex, as I answer some of these questions, I might obfuscate a little bit. I might kind of like lean towards the answer. And what I mean is the play is set up as discovery. So as things go along, information is given out. So you'll develop an idea of what you're seeing, and that idea will grow as you experience the play, right? So my short answer to your question is neither and both. And so in my show, there's actually 3 different types of zombies. And they act in different ways. And there are reasons for that. And we kind of get into that as the play goes along.
So there's a historical backdrop to this show. What can you tell us about that?
For sure, yeah. So, Alex, the heart of this is an investigation of government. What is it? Why do we have it? How does it work? Now, I don't mean like in the minutia, the wonkiness. I mean, why do we have government? Why do human beings need that? Or do they need that? Or is it, you know what I mean? So it's sort of it's an investigation into sort of government as an idea. And so to do that, I'm looking back at our own history. I'm looking back at the Magna Carta. I'm looking back at, what happened in Greece and Rome and et cetera, right? So all of these things kind of inform how these 6 people are talking about the goal that they have to jumpstart government, because they feel that it must be there for society to reform, for society to have, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to put it in our context.
Okay. So in the podcast that this will be part of, which I just recorded the main part of this morning with my colleague Toni Tresca, we were talking about this show and zombies in general. And, we were talking about how zombies are often, sometimes they're the comic relief. They're a mirror to the character, to the human characters, and more of a reflection. And a lot of times in some of these zombie properties that we're familiar with, that after a while the characters, the humans get pretty good at whacking them, and they're not as much of a threat as they are something else. So what role do the zombies play in Join or Die?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question, Alex. I'm a little bit older, obviously, George Romero, I can remember being 11 years old and they showed Night of the Living Dead at our school. After school, I've never been more terrified walking home in the dark in my
That's
entire
so funny.
life.
Yeah, I was just saying the same thing.
Yeah, a totally different world we grew up in. But anyway, it's just so ripe now for, like you said, to use it kind of in any way you want to. Right? We've developed this character that so often is a reflection of social change or, problems in our society, whatever it is. And for whatever reason, I think we've all taken that on. Like, here's a genre that we love to watch that is almost always presenting something other than just zombie carnage. You know what I mean? And so as I thought about this, and when the play started, we actually started developing it through some devised theater techniques. Okay. And so as we started working on it, I was like, we were talking about what is the media right now that people love that sucks them immediately, right? They love cop shows. They love medical shows. They love zombie shows. And as soon as we started talking about zombie shows, I was like, well, of course it's a zombie. Of course there's a zombie apocalypse. And so within that, we can use those zombies. Like I said, there's 3 different types of zombies. So, this is sort of it's a formula experiment. Can I use the zombies to mean more than just one thing?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it will make more sense after I see it. But so I think we think about live theater. I think one of the reasons that horror isn't necessarily done that much, and zombies in particular, just because the stage effects are tricky. Zombie makeup is not easy to do to make it look realistic. What are some of the ways that you're tackling just those production aspects?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Alex. I think a lot of it, we will kind of be leaning into the actors. And what I mean is, the sets are going to be fairly minimalist. The power of that play, the power of the performance is going to be what carries it, right? It's not a huge set. I'm an independent guy doing a little show. So we have limited resources and we're doing our best with it. But what we can do is, like, for instance, great sound effects. A buddy of mine in LA is a sound designer, is working with me on that. We're developing some projections right now. So we can kind of add elements, but still leave it to the performers to really sell those moments. Sometimes there'll be more makeup, et cetera. But most of the time, we're gonna rely on the actors, your imagination, and some lights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's producing this show? Is it associated with the theater company here in Colorado? I know it's going to be at the Dairy Center in Boulder.
Yeah, it is. So I'm working with the Wishbone Theater Collective. So background story is that I developed this play at the beginning with a friend of mine, and she is a long form improv actor. So we started this together. We were using devised theater techniques at the beginning. And then from there, I wrote the script around some big chunks of what we did there. Unfortunately, Laurie's life, I won't get too far into it, but she just had a bunch of stuff go on in her personal life, and she had to back out. So now it's us, but mainly, sorry, let me do that again. It's us, but mainly it's me at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you I thought Laura said that you live in Idaho. Is that?
I do. Yeah. I live in Idaho now, but I lived in Boulder from about 2000 to 2009. So I spent a pretty good chunk of time here. So been to the dairy many times. And so honestly, Alex, I thought there was no way I'd ever be able to put on a show there, but it turned out they had an open week. And so off we go.
Okay. Are you going to be is it the Grayscale? Is that the smaller theater?
It's like the middle one. It's not,
okay.
The Carson, I think, is even smaller, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And so what are the dates that this show is going to be there?
We're running from the 21st to the 24th. It'll be 5 shows, 2 on Saturday. And Friday night, we're going to run a talk back. So we'll be there kind of hanging out after the show and discussing things with the audience, et cetera. So that's the general schedule right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can I ask just a little bit about your background? Is this have you written a lot of plays before, or where does this fit in with your career?
Yeah. That's a good question again, Alex. So I'm a writer. I've been a writer for decades. Mostly you'd never know it because it's on the packaging you read. It's on it's the product name that you bought. But as they say in Hollywood, what I really want to do is direct. So along the way, I make short films. I'm a creative in general. I have a band with my partner and some friends, et cetera. So, I'm generally a creative, but this is my first play. It's a world premiere play and a world premiere me writing a play.
And is it like a 2-act? Is it a full length play?
Yeah, it will be. Yep. 2 hours with intermission. So,
and then have you had pretty good luck casting some good actors for it?
Alex, it's been so much fun reaching out and a lot because of the timing. Again, I will admit to being a sort of dilettante, right? I kind of am dropping into the theater world. I don't know how it works, but I have enough people around me to kind of help, right? So it's been so much fun to come in here and see who's available when, figure out the theater schedule, and et cetera. So the acting pool is a little bit smaller because I was late to the game, but we found some great folks here in town in Denver and et cetera. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with them and working on it.
Okay, so not only your first play that you've written, you're also directing. So I'm assuming this is the first play you've ever directed.
First play I've ever directed. I've directed stuff before, commercials, short films, stuff like that. So it's not an entirely different skill set, but it is different. Okay.
All right. Well, you sound a little like me. I'm doing marketing content and stuff like that on the side and between my more fun stuff with the theater and whatever. So, you gotta do what you gotta do. You can't always support yourself with the actual thing you'd rather be doing, I guess. But
that's right. What do they tell you in art school? The best thing you can do to be a successful artist is get a trust fund.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Bryce Edmonds, playwright of Join or Die, will be at the Dairy Center here in August. So best of luck, break legs all around, and I hope I can get out there and see it.
Thank you, Alex, so much for the time. And one last thing, just so everyone knows, this play is about democracy. So we've set it up with the Dairy so that we will have $5 tickets at the door. And that's for if the seats don't sell, show up an hour before. There might be a $5 ticket. And I would have made it free, but we have to pay the dairy and their people have to eat and stuff. So yeah, that's just another part. We want anyone who can see it to be able to see it. And Alex, one more part that we didn't talk about, if I can. This play is entirely gender casting neutral. Actually, it's everything casting neutral. So I wrote this play so that every part can be played by any human. Doesn't matter who they are, age, race, gender, it doesn't matter. So it's been a very interesting experiment just to open that door. and see, is this something I can accomplish? Can I get to the end of this using no pronouns? So it's been interesting. It'll be great to see what happens on the ground and see how people respond to that.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bryce, thanks again, and best of luck to you.
Thanks so much, Alex. Hope to see you at the show.
All right, we are back. So we're ready to hit this week's Colorado headliners. These are some of the upcoming shows we think you should know about in no particular order. Toni, what do you have to start? Let me take that again because I should have said something about. All right, well, that's your zombie fix for the week. Looking forward to going and checking out Bryce's show at the Dairy, hopefully in August sometime. It sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, now we're ready to hit this week's Colorado headliners. These are some of the upcoming shows that we think you should know about in no particular order. Toni, what do you have to start?
I'm kicking this off with an oldie but a goodie. Theater Aspen just kicked off its production of Mamma Mia on July 5th. This is the ABBA musical about the mother-daughter who the mom reveals that she has 3 men who could potentially be her father, and they go on this very wacky adventure in Greece at the daughter's wedding to kind of discover who the father is. It's very fun. It's very silly. You've probably seen it before, but you maybe have never seen it out in Theater Aspen's outdoor amphitheater space. And so if you're in the area and you've got some downtime after your outdoor activities, why not head over to Mamma Mia? You know what you're going to get.
Yep. You just spent $3,000 at the Prada store. You can wander over and check out Mamma Mia there in Aspen. My first headliner is Some Like It Hot. So this is going to be in residence at the Denver Center Buell Theater, July 8th through 20th. I know you're going to be out at it. Our other correspondent, Kim Nicoletti, is going to be checking that out and doing our review. So, this is one for Tonys, including best choreography, best costumes. Also, it's a all-out dance spectacular is what the New York Times said about it. So it's based on this old Marilyn Monroe film, and it's set in Chicago during Prohibition, and it's I guess it's kind of like Nuns on the Run, kind of 2 musicians forced to flee after witnessing a mob hit. So actually, I shouldn't say like Nuns on the Run. Nuns on the Run was clearly maybe ripped off from this plot is what it sounds like. But anyway, I'm sure that'll be a lot of fun. So I'm curious to hear what you think of it.
I was sold once I learned that there's multiple tap dancing numbers, and
the tap. Toni,
I love a tap. I love a tap dancing number. So I do have to. I am obligated to see it. And I'm fascinated to see how the element of the cross dressing is updated. Because what that plot description notably left out is the 2 people on the run dress themselves up as women to go and escape from these gangsters. They join an all-female band of musicians. And so I am curious to see how that element plays in 2025.
Yeah, for sure.
My next headliner is a burlesque show. It's a Nightmare on Strip Street, a burlesque parody taking place at the Arc in Denver. This is where we saw the Julie Toby's Give Five production of Hedwig last season. And this is from the producers of The Empire Strips Back. That's the Star Wars parody burlesque show. And this is a stage show that slashes its way through classic horror movies, including Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Chucky, and Scream, and many more. And so I will be attending this weekend. I'm a big horror fan. I'm curious to see what this looks like and praying to God that this is better than the Saw the musical parody.
It sounds like it. I mean, it's got to be somewhat more interesting than that. So great. Well, my next one is a little more traditional. The Barber of Seville. This is the opera at Central City Opera House playing through August 3rd. So our reviewer, Alice Caitlin, saw it, loved it. She said, just kind of raved about it, said it was just a really great production of what's known as opera's most famous comedy from Rossini. And it's just a really fast, funny kind of show that, and also a great opportunity to go up to Central City and cool off. They have that nice cool theater there, and lots of stuff going up there. You can also go gamble your face off after the show or before, right?
That's right. And pretty soon, I hear you might be able to go hit up an adults only stripping club or dance club. I hear that
What?
there are plans to build a new kind of adult entertainment venue right near Central City, which Opera House, which people are up in arms about.
Oh boy, I bet. I remember back in Summit County, there was a guy who wanted to open a strip club in Frisco. And yeah, the people lined up even in a pretty liberal place like Frisco, people were still like, no thanks.
People didn't want to get frisky in Frisco? Shocked.
Nope.
Well, I'll turn now to my next headliner. No stripping in this one. This is a show from Audacious Immersive. It's their legally distinct comic parody of Dungeons and Dragons, Woodlands, and Wyverns, traders at Baldur's Door. I think I'm saying that word right.
I think so.
It's spelled Wyverns. This takes place at the First Baptist Church in Denver. Don't let the name scare you. This church is very friendly. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke here back in the 60s, and Audacious Immersive has used this space in the past for its performances, so they know what they're doing in here. And they say that in this experience, audience members will make choices for your character, directing them how to behave and react to the fantastical elements around them on your quest to save Baldur's Door.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking this out. I think I'm going on the 18th or something like that. But yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun, Audacious. And also it was cool. They sent out, they actually had to kind of reach out and get physical addresses, but they sent this, an invite in the mail looking like, as my family said, it looked like I'd gotten my invitation to Hogwarts.
It did. It had like a really fancy stamp, golden
steel
stamp on the back of it. It was, or was it steel? Yeah, it was in this old letter like looking thing. It was written in very fancy font, handwritten, I would add. Very, very cool.
Props to Ren Manley and crew for doing something innovative in the decidedly non-digital space. So my next headliner is one we've mentioned already, but worth mentioning again, What the Constitution Means to Me at Theatre Silco and Silverthorne, July 11th through August 3rd, starring Missy Moore. So this is a show that I still haven't seen yet, so I'm going to maybe try and make it up to this one. But it's a play where this character resurrects her teenage self in order to trace the profound relationship between a gathering of 4 generations of women and the founding document that shaped their lives. So I think that one will be a real cool one to check out.
I would imagine so. I saw that production with Jess Robley in the main role when Betsy did it.
Yeah.
Was that 2 years ago now?
Yeah, I think so.
It was a very strong production. It's a great script. I think you definitely enjoy it. And Missy seems like I've never seen her act, so I would be curious to see what that looks like.
She was in a one-woman show for En Toto 2, maybe about 5 years ago. She was great in that. So she's definitely done the one-woman thing before.
Nice. My next pick is for those who are looking for some 90s nostalgia. D-Town, this time it's personal, over at the People's Building in Aurora on July 14th. This show has over 30 dudes trying to recreate NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, complete with dodgy choreography, midlife crisis hair flips, and more nostalgia than your yearbook. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's Denver's #1 over 30 boy band who blasts through nostalgic hits in a silly 90-minute stage show.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. And we had him on the podcast, I don't know, earlier this year to talk about another show that they were doing. So I would check that out if you get a chance if you're in Aurora.
And I was doing a little bit of research. Apparently, this show is available to travel up to 200 miles. So if you want the D-Town boys to come to you,
act now.
Maybe act now.
They're going to be selling out left and right. So yeah, I'm sure that'd be a lot of fun to have those guys show up and do a bar mitzvah or something like that.
Or like a bachelorette party or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. All right. My next one is a little off the theater path, but it's his Cirque du Soleil is coming back into town with their show Echo, which will be at the Ball Arena in the sort of the parking lot there. They'll have their big tent set up July 12th through August 17th. So, I was looking at the description of it. It's like, it sounds like a Cirque du Soleil show, but, they're not nothing. They're really amazing to go see if you haven't seen them. If you've seen aerial, if you've seen acrobatics in any other way, you've never seen it quite like Cirque du Soleil does it. This is the creme de la creme of these types of performances and artists, and it really is a lot of fun to check out.
Totally. I've never seen a Cirque du Soleil show though. I've only seen the clips online, so yeah, maybe I need to remedy that at some point. My final headliner for this week is a solo performance created by Thaddeus Phillips. It's called Around the World in 80 Toys. It's going to be over at Buntport Theater in Denver from July 19th through August 3rd. And Thaddeus Phillips, he's fresh off of creating, co-writing, designing, and directing Disney's new musical, The Magic Box, which is kind of a combination of a lot of its shows that they do. He's now back at Buntport with a solo performance based on the last days of Georges Méliès, who is a French filmmaker and the inventor of cinema, who got stuck working in a tiny toy shop in a Paris train station in 1925. And so he uses Magical Toy Box with 80 small toys and a large screen to create this homage to cinema filled with toys, figures, maps, and a ton of objects.
Oh, that sounds super cool. That was the filmmaker that made that Trip to the Moon film, right? That really early. That
is him. Yeah. And so I am going to be reviewing this for OnStage Colorado. I am very curious to see what this show is all about. It sounds like a very Fringe style show.
Yeah, it does.
But I'll be curious. I always like these quirky one-person shows.
All right, my last show is Flying West. This is the final show of the season for TheaterWorks at the Ent Center there in Colorado Springs. Runs July 10th through 27th. So this is directed by Marissa Hebert down there, and it's about 1890s Kansas homesteading Dove sisters in the black town of Nicodemus, and a story about sounds like speculators are showing up trying to buy up the town from the outside, and an unsavory brother-in-law who might break up the family from within. So it definitely sounds like a drama. I'm not familiar with this play, but I guess it's fairly well known by Pearl Cleage or Cleage.
Yeah, Pearl Cleage is definitely kind of a very well-known playwright. Blues for an Alabama is probably her most famous play, which is Firehouse. Did they just do that, or are they doing that soon?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Either way, yeah, she's an African-American playwright who's pretty prolific. I've also not seen this show, but TheaterWorks usually does a pretty strong job. Well, that is it for this week's Colorado Headliners and brings us to the end of the podcast for this week. So if people are still hungry for more theater content, Alex, what can people check out on the OnStage Colorado website?
Yeah, well, we've got reviews of what I was talking about, that Meow Wolf thing, and also Barber of Seville is up there. We'll have reviews soon of some of the shows we've talked about. Flying West, April will be at. And our correspondent Kim Nicoletti is going to be checking out the Adams Mystery Playhouse, which we've never done a review of. They have a show called Murder at the Tiki Bar, and she wanted to go check it out. So we'll have that, which will be great to have someone out there because that's a popular place, and they seem to be hanging on year after year. So Alice Caitlin will also be at Central City to review Once Upon a Mattress, which is kind of like their more regular musical that they do every year. I'm going to be at Richard II at Colorado Shakespeare Festival this Sunday. I'll write about that. I've been trying to do my homework. Actually, somebody gave me a copy of Richard II a long time ago, so I'm actually trying to read through it some and looking at Colorado Shakespeare Festival also does these cool videos with the dramaturge to talk about. So if you ever go into a show, I'd recommend checking that out because Shakespeare, it really helps to do your homework before you go into otherwise, so you don't get lost, especially in some of these histories that are a little more complicated. So Yeah, so that's what's coming up.
And then I'll also be over at A Doll's House Part 2 this weekend by a newer company. What is their name? Denver Ensemble
Theater
Theater
ensemble or something.
or
Yeah,
something like that. I have not seen a production by them. I guarantee by the time I write the review, I will know the name of the production company. And I'm going to see that on its opening night Friday at DU. And I'm going to be sharing my review about that for OnStage Colorado.
cool. Yeah, I believe it is Denver Theater Ensemble, and yeah, the Denver Center did this play a few years back, and it was just really great play. And it'll be interesting to see how well, because one of the things about the Denver Center was that the costumes were really lavish and the sets and all that. So you're probably going to see a slightly different version of it, but hopefully the play stands up. So
Yeah, I've performed pieces of this show in my acting class in undergrad.
Ooh.
So I'm very familiar with this text. So I'm quite curious to see what it looks like staged in a much more intimate space than I imagine it was at the Denver Center. Yeah, it's in the black box space at DU, not even one of their bigger spaces.
Yep.
So, if you want to stay up to date on what is going on in theaters and comedy venues all across the state, subscribe to the OnStage Colorado newsletter, which comes out pretty much every Thursday.
Yeah, and next week for our bonus episode, we're not sure what we're doing or if we're doing anything, but check it out. If we have something, we'll do it. But yeah, it's been a busy time, and I know Tony's still moving into his new place, so we'll see what we can do. So that's yeah. All right, that's all for this week. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca, and we'll see you at the show.